Mary Beth Clearwater dropped her Cherokee prayer beads, the turquoise scattering across Sacred Heart Cemetery's red earth as she stared at the impossible sight before her. The last mourners were still walking away from her husband Joseph's grave when the massive gray wolf emerged from the oak forest. A creature that shouldn't exist in Oklahoma, hadn't been seen in Cherokee Nation territory for over 50 years. The wolf wasn't hunting or wandering. It walked straight to Joseph's freshly covered grave, sat down like a trained dog, and howled once, a sound so mournful it made the remaining funeral guests freeze mid-step. Children pressed against their mothers' legs while elderly Cherokee elders whispered ancient words about spirit guides and omens from the other world. Mary Beth's arthritic hands trembled as she watched the wolf's amber eyes lock onto hers with an intelligence that seemed almost human. Her late husband's favorite flannel shirt, still carrying his scent from this morning when she'd held it close, fluttered in the June breeze. "Get back!" someone shouted from behind her. But what terrified Mary Beth most wasn't the wolf's presence. It was the recognition flickering in those golden eyes, as if this creature knew exactly who she was and why she mattered. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. 15 years had passed since that impossible day at Sacred Heart Cemetery, and Mary Beth Clearwater had learned to live with ghosts. At 83, she sat on the sagging porch of her log cabin, watching the same gray wolf that had appeared at Joseph's funeral emerge from the Ouachita National Forest tree line, every evening at sunset, without fail, for 15 years. "There you are again," she whispered in Cherokee, her voice carrying across the 40 acres of Cherokee Nation land that had been in Joseph's family for generations. The wolf sat at the forest edge, amber eyes fixed on her with that same unsettling intelligence she remembered from the cemetery. Neighbors had long since stopped visiting, convinced Mary Beth was losing her mind to grief and old age. The cabin felt enormous without Joseph's presence. His wildlife biology books still lined the shelves, his Cherokee Nation Cultural Preservation Awards gathering dust on the mantel. Their marriage had lasted 43 years, but they'd never been blessed with children. A source of quiet heartbreak that had drawn them closer together and deeper into their work, preserving Cherokee traditions and protecting tribal lands. Mary Beth's arthritic fingers fumbled with the pill bottle Dr. Billy Crowfeather had prescribed for her heart condition. The little white tablets made her feel foggy, disconnected, but Billy insisted they were keeping her alive. "Your heart isn't strong, Mary Beth," he told her just last week. "These medications are the only thing standing between you and another cardiac episode." The financial realities of widowhood pressed against her like the Oklahoma heat. Social Security provided barely $1,200 a month, and the property taxes on 40 acres of prime Cherokee land had climbed to $8,000 annually. The overdue notices sat in a neat stack on Joseph's old desk, each one stamped with increasingly urgent red warnings. Her great-niece Rebecca had been calling more frequently, her voice tight with worry, and something else Mary Beth couldn't quite identify. "Aunt Mary Beth, you can't keep living alone out there," Rebecca would say during their weekly phone conversations. "What if you fall? What if that wolf attacks you? I've found some wonderful assisted living facilities in Tulsa where you'd have people to talk to, proper medical care." But Mary Beth couldn't bear the thought of leaving the land where she and Joseph had built their life together. Every morning, she tended the small garden where his ashes were scattered among the traditional Cherokee medicinal plants. Every afternoon, she sat in his favorite chair, reading his research journals filled with incomprehensible notes about wildlife corridors and species reintroduction programs. The wolf never approached closer than 50 yards, but its presence had become as routine as sunrise. Sometimes Mary Beth found herself talking to it, sharing her fears about losing the homestead, her confusion about Joseph's cryptic research notes, her growing concern that the medications were making her memory worse instead of better. As twilight deepened over the Cherokee Hills, the wolf stood and melted back into the forest shadows, leaving Mary Beth alone with her ghosts and the growing certainty that something was about to change forever. The morning Rebecca arrived with nursing home brochures, Mary Beth knew her time was running out. Her great-niece stood in the cabin's main room, her business suit and perfectly styled hair looking out of place among Joseph's rustic furnishings and Cherokee artifacts. "Aunt Mary Beth, we need to talk seriously about your future," Rebecca said, spreading glossy pamphlets across the kitchen table. Sunset Manor, Golden Years Care Center, Pleasant Valley Assisted Living. Each one promised safety, medical supervision, and social activities for seniors. Mary Beth's hands shook as she poured coffee into two mismatched mugs. "I'm fine here, Rebecca. This is my home." "Look at these bills." Rebecca pulled out the stack of overdue notices Mary Beth had tried to hide. $8,000 in back taxes, $1,500 for heating oil. Your medication costs alone are eating up your Social Security. And, Dr. Crowfeather is concerned about your mental state. My mental state is fine. You talk to a wolf, Aunt Mary Beth, every single day. Neighbors see you having full conversations with a wild animal. Rebecca's voice softened with practiced sympathy. "I know losing Uncle Joseph was devastating, but it's been 15 years. You can't keep living in the past." Mary Beth stared out the window toward the forest where the wolf would appear in a few hours. "That wolf has never hurt me. If anything, it's been protective. Wild animals aren't pets. They're dangerous, especially to elderly people living alone." Rebecca leaned forward, her expression earnest. "I've already spoken with the intake coordinator at Sunset Manor. They have a beautiful room available with a view of their gardens. You'd have 3 meals a day, medication management, activities with people your own age. I don't want activities with people my own age. I want to stay on Cherokee land where I belong." Rebecca's facade cracked slightly. "Aunt Mary Beth, I love you, but I can't watch you deteriorate out here alone. If you won't make this decision voluntarily, I'll have to pursue other options, legal guardianship if necessary." The words hit Mary Beth like a physical blow. "You'd have me declared incompetent?" "Only if you force my hand. I'm giving you 1 week to decide. Next Monday, I'm coming back with a social worker to assess your living situation. If they determine you're unsafe here, the decision will be made for you." After Rebecca left, Mary Beth sat in Joseph's chair, staring at the brochures scattered across the table. Each facility looked sterile, institutional, nothing like the Cherokee Nation home where she'd spent the best years of her life. The photographs showed elderly residents sitting in circles, playing bingo, participating in crafts that looked nothing like traditional Cherokee beadwork or pottery. That evening, the wolf's behavior changed dramatically. Instead of sitting at his usual spot at the forest edge, he paced restlessly, whining in a way Mary Beth had never heard before. The sound was urgent, almost frantic, and when she stepped onto the porch, the wolf did something unprecedented. He approached within 20 feet of the cabin. "What is it, friend?" Mary Beth asked in Cherokee, using the same gentle tone she'd use with a frightened child. The wolf looked directly at her, then walked toward the forest trail that led to Broken Arrow Lake. He stopped, looked back at her, and repeated the behavior. The message was unmistakable. "Follow me." Mary Beth's rational mind screamed warnings. She was 83 years old with a heart condition, about to follow a wild wolf into dense forest as darkness approached. But something in the animal's amber eyes compelled her forward. She grabbed her hiking stick and a small flashlight, leaving a note on the kitchen table in case Rebecca returned early. The wolf led her along familiar trails she and Joseph had hiked decades ago, but then veered into denser woods she'd rarely explored. The undergrowth was thick, and Mary Beth struggled to keep up, her arthritic knees protesting with every step. But the wolf seemed to understand her limitations, stopping whenever she needed rest and finding the easiest paths through the terrain. After nearly 2 hours of hiking, the wolf stopped at a clearing Mary Beth vaguely remembered from camping trips 40 years ago. He pawed at the base of a large boulder, whining and looking at her expectantly. The dirt appeared recently disturbed, and when Mary Beth knelt beside the spot, her fingers found something hard buried just beneath the surface. She pulled out a small metal box, waterproof and sealed with modern latches. Inside, her flashlight revealed a digital camera, several USB drives, and a handwritten note that made her blood freeze. The handwriting was unmistakably Joseph's, but the date was impossible. 6 months ago. If you're reading this, the wolf found you. Trust him completely. The truth is, in cabin number 247 at Broken Arrow Lake. You have to go alone. You have to go now. Our lives depend on it. J. Mary Beth's hands trembled as she read the note again, then examined the camera. The photos showed the wolf being fed, treated for injuries, living in what appeared to be a domestic setting. Someone had been caring for this animal, and that someone's handwriting matched her dead husband's perfectly. The wolf watched her process this impossible information, then began walking toward the lake. The 3-hour hike to Broken Arrow Lake tested every limit of Mary Beth's 83-year-old body. Her arthritic knees screamed with each step down the rocky trail, and her heart medication seemed to be wearing off, leaving her breathless and dizzy. But the wolf maintained a perfect pace, never too fast, stopping whenever she needed to rest against a tree or catch her breath. Storm clouds gathered overhead, turning the late afternoon sky an ominous gray-green that promised severe weather before nightfall. Mary Beth's cell phone showed no signal this deep in the Ouachita National Forest, and the battery was nearly dead. If she became injured or lost, no one would find her until Rebecca returned next week, if then. The trail triggered a flood of memories from her life with Joseph. This was the same path they'd taken on their first date 45 years ago, when he was a young wildlife biologist fresh out of college, and she was teaching Cherokee language classes at the Tribal Cultural Center. He'd promised to show her a hidden lake where his grandfather used to take him fishing, and she'd been charmed by his knowledge of traditional Cherokee plant medicines growing along the trail. "See that purple flower?" Joseph had said, pointing to wild bergamot blooming beside the path. "My grandmother used to brew tea from those leaves to calm anxious hearts." He'd looked at her with those gentle brown eyes and added, "Maybe you could teach me the Cherokee name for it sometime." They'd returned to Broken Arrow Lake dozens of times during their marriage, for anniversary picnics, quiet afternoons, when the stress of his wildlife conservation work became overwhelming, and during the dark months after each miscarriage when they'd needed the healing solitude of wild places. The lake had become their sanctuary, a place where they could grieve their childlessness together and find strength to continue their work preserving Cherokee traditions. Now the wolf was leading her back to that sacred spot, carrying Joseph's impossible message and a truth that could shatter everything she thought she knew about the last 15 years. The cabin appeared through the trees exactly where Joseph's note had indicated, a small fishing shelter supposedly abandoned for decades, but clearly showing signs of recent habitation. Solar panels glinted on the roof, and she could hear the quiet hum of a generator running inside. The wolf ran directly to the front door, scratching at the weathered wood and whining with obvious excitement. Mary Beth's hands shook as she approached the cabin. Through the single window, she could see modern equipment that definitely hadn't been there during her last visit decades ago. Research computers, filing cabinets, and walls covered with maps and charts. Someone had been living here, working here, watching her from this hidden vantage point that overlooked the entire Cherokee Valley where her cabin sat. The door opened before she could knock. Joseph Clearwater stood in the doorway, 15 years older and weathered by hiding, but unmistakably alive. The wolf leaped toward him with pure joy, and Joseph caught the animal in an embrace that spoke of years of companionship and mutual devotion. Mary Beth's legs gave out, and she would have collapsed if Joseph hadn't rushed forward to catch her. His arms felt real, solid, warm with life, and the familiar scent of cedar smoke and wild sage that had always clung to his clothes. But the shock of seeing him, of having her world turned completely upside down, sent her into a spiral of confusion and rage. "By D," he whispered, using the Cherokee word for wife that he'd called her since their wedding day. "I'm so sorry, I'm so very sorry." "You're dead," she managed to gasp. "I buried you. I grieved for you. I've been alone for 15 years. I had to let you think I was dead. It was the only way to keep you safe." Joseph helped her into the cabin, settling her into a chair beside a wood-burning stove that filled the small space with comforting warmth. The wolf, Guardian, Joseph called him, lay down beside her chair, offering the solid comfort of his presence. "Safe from what?" Mary Beth's voice cracked with 15 years of accumulated grief and loneliness. "Safe from knowing my husband was alive? Safe from the truth?" Joseph knelt beside her chair, his hands covering hers with the same gentle touch she remembered. But those hands were more weathered now, scarred from years of outdoor living, and his hair had gone completely gray. "I was investigating illegal uranium mining on Cherokee sacred burial grounds. I discovered a conspiracy that went all the way to the Bureau of Indian Affairs, people who were willing to kill to protect their mining contracts. Your heart attack was attempted poisoning. Dr. Billy Crow. Feather saved my life and helped me fake my death. The only way to protect you was to disappear completely, to make them think the threat died with me." Joseph's voice broke as he continued. "But I couldn't leave you completely unprotected. Guardian here was injured in mining equipment, and I rescued him. I trained him to watch over you, to make sure you stayed safe while Billy and I worked to expose the conspiracy." Mary Beth stared at the wolf, understanding finally dawning. "He's been protecting me all these years, not just watching, protecting. He's incredibly intelligent. I taught him to recognize threats, to alert me if anyone dangerous came near your property. Every evening when he visited you, he was reporting back to me about your health, your safety, your state of mind. The pills Billy prescribed for my heart, mild sedatives to keep you calm and appearing slightly confused. We needed Rebecca and the mining company to think you were declining mentally, not a threat to their plans." Joseph's expression grew grim. "Because Rebecca isn't just trying to help you, Mary Beth. She's been paid by Consolidated Mining Corporation to get you off Cherokee land. They need elderly landowners declared incompetent so they can seize mineral rights." The betrayal hit harder than learning Joseph was alive. Rebecca, whom she'd trusted, whom she'd loved like the daughter she'd never had, was working to destroy her life for money. "How long have you known?" Mary Beth asked. 2 years. That's when Guardian led me to the truth about Rebecca's real agenda." Joseph led Mary Beth deeper into the cabin, revealing the full extent of his 15-year investigation. The walls were covered with photographs, maps, and documents that painted a picture of systematic corruption reaching from local mining companies all the way to federal agencies. Guardian settled beside the wood stove, his amber eyes never leaving Mary Beth's face, as if sensing her emotional turmoil. "This started with uranium deposits discovered beneath Cherokee burial grounds," Joseph explained, pointing to geological surveys spread across a large table. "But what I found goes much deeper. Consolidated Mining Corporation has been targeting elderly Native American landowners across Oklahoma, using family members and medical professionals to have them declared incompetent. Mary Beth studied the photographs showing mining equipment staged just outside Cherokee Nation boundaries, waiting for permits that would allow them to begin excavation. How many families have they destroyed? 17 so far, all elderly tribal members with valuable mineral rights, all suddenly diagnosed with cognitive decline, all placed in nursing homes owned by mining company subsidiaries. Joseph's voice carried the weight of years spent documenting these injustices. The nursing homes are just holding facilities until the landowners die and mineral rights transfer to the state. The scope of the conspiracy made Mary Beth's head spin. Rebecca knows about all of this? Rebecca was recruited 2 years ago when her husband's gambling debts reached dangerous levels. The mining company offered to pay off $50,000 in debt in exchange for helping them acquire your land. Joseph showed her bank records documenting payments to Rebecca's account. They convinced her she was helping you by ensuring proper medical care, but the truth is, they need you gone before their uranium permits are approved. Mary Beth sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the betrayal. Rebecca had been like a daughter to her, the closest thing to family she had left after Joseph's supposed death. To learn that every concerned phone call, every worried visit, every suggestion about assisted living had been motivated by greed, felt like losing Joseph all over again. Dr. Crow Feather has been protecting you by prescribing sedatives instead of heart medication, Joseph continued. Your heart is actually stronger than it's been in years. Billy's been giving you mild calming agents to make you appear confused and dependent, supporting Rebecca's claims about your mental decline while keeping you safe from more aggressive interventions. Guardian rose from his spot by the stove and approached Mary Beth, resting his massive head on her knee. The gesture felt like absolution, as if the wolf understood her pain and was offering comfort. She stroked his graying fur, finding strength in his steady presence. "Why now?" Mary Beth asked. "Why reveal the truth after 15 years?" "Because they're accelerating their timeline. Rebecca's bringing a social worker next Monday to have you declared incompetent. Once that happens, you'll be removed from your land within days, and the mining permits will be fast-tracked through federal approval." Joseph's expression grew urgent. "We have less than a week to expose the entire conspiracy." Joseph showed her documentation proving the mining company's connections to corrupt Bureau of Indian Affairs officials who had been approving mineral rights transfers without proper tribal consultation. The paper trail revealed a network of nursing homes, medical professionals, and family members all working together to systematically strip Cherokee elders of their land rights. "But I have something they don't know I have," Joseph said, pulling out a locked briefcase. Inside were original Cherokee Nation treaties from the 1800s, documents that had been thought lost for over a century. "I found these hidden in the archives at the tribal headquarters. They prove that mineral rights on your land can never be transferred to non-Cherokee entities, even if you're declared incompetent." Mary Beth examined the treaties, written in both English and Cherokee syllabary, bearing official government seals that established permanent Cherokee sovereignty over specific territories, including her 40 acres. "Where did you find these?" "Guardian led me to them, actually. 3 years ago, he started behaving strangely around the old tribal building, pawing at a specific spot in the basement. When I investigated, I found a hidden compartment containing these treaties and other documents the government tried to suppress." The wolf's intelligence continued to amaze Mary Beth. "How does he know these things?" "I've been working with Cherokee elders who believe Guardian isn't just unusually smart, he's connected to the spiritual traditions of our people. Wolves were sacred to Cherokee ancestors, seen as guides and protectors. Some elders think Guardian carries ancestral memory, an understanding of what needs to be preserved." Joseph explained his plan to expose the conspiracy through an emergency session of the Cherokee Nation Tribal Council. With the original treaties as evidence and documentation of the mining company's illegal activities, they could not only protect Mary Beth's land but also save the other elderly tribal members who had already been victimized. The challenge is getting you to the tribal headquarters without alerting Rebecca or the mining company's security teams, Joseph said. They've been monitoring your property for months, waiting for any sign that you're more competent than you appear. Mary Beth felt a clarity of purpose she hadn't experienced since Joseph's supposed death. What do you need me to do? Tomorrow morning you need to return home and act exactly as you have been, confused, dependent, worried about the wolf. Let Rebecca think her plan is working. Meanwhile, Guardian will carry messages between us, and Billy will help coordinate with tribal council members. Joseph showed her a communication system they'd developed using Guardian as a messenger. The wolf could carry small packages in a specially designed collar, traveling between the cabin and Mary Beth's property without being detected by human surveillance. He's done this dozens of times over the years, carrying medical supplies when Billy needed to monitor your real health status. The storm that had been threatening finally broke, sending rain drumming against the cabin roof. Lightning illuminated the lake through the windows, and thunder rolled across the Cherokee hills like ancestral voices calling for justice. Mary Beth felt connected to something larger than herself, to Joseph, to Guardian, to the land her people had fought to protect for generations. "There's something else," Joseph said quietly. "The mining company isn't just after uranium. Preliminary surveys suggest your land sits on one of the largest undiscovered rare earth mineral deposits in North America. The economic value could reach hundreds of millions of dollars. The stakes were even higher than Mary Beth had imagined. No wonder they're willing to destroy families to get it. Rare earth minerals are essential for electronics, military equipment, renewable energy technology. Controlling domestic sources has become a matter of national security, which is how they've justified involving federal agencies in what should be Cherokee Nation internal affairs. Joseph explained that exposing the conspiracy wouldn't just save Mary Beth's land, it would establish crucial legal precedents protecting tribal sovereignty across the country. Your case could prevent this from happening to other indigenous communities. Guardian suddenly lifted his head, ears alert to sounds Mary Beth couldn't detect. Through the rain, she heard the distant rumble of vehicles approaching on the lake access road. Joseph quickly extinguished the cabin's lights and moved to the window. "Mining company security," he whispered. "They must have followed Guardian's trail or detected the generator." "We need to leave immediately." Joseph grabbed essential documents while Mary Beth gathered her strength for another difficult hike in the storm. Guardian was already at the door, ready to lead them through back trails that would avoid the security teams now surrounding the lake. "Where will we go?" Mary Beth asked. "There's a network of traditional Cherokee hiding places throughout these hills. Guardian knows them all." Joseph helped her into a waterproof jacket. "Our ancestors used these same caves and shelters to evade removal in the 1830s. Some battles never end. They just pause between generations." As they slipped out the cabin's back door into the storm, Mary Beth felt a profound connection to her Cherokee heritage. She was no longer just an elderly widow trying to keep her home. She was a warrior in an ongoing fight for tribal survival, armed with truth and guided by a wolf who carried the wisdom of her ancestors. The lightning illuminated Guardian, leading them into the forest, his gray coat blending with storm shadows as he guided them towards safety. Behind them, flashlight beams swept through the abandoned cabin, but they were already disappearing into the Cherokee night, protected by traditions older than the corruption trying to destroy them. Tomorrow would bring the fight of their lives, but tonight, Mary Beth felt truly alive for the first time in 15 years. Dawn broke gray and ominous over the Cherokee hills as Mary Beth and Joseph emerged from the limestone cave where they'd sheltered through the storm. Guardian had led them through a maze of traditional hiding places their ancestors had used during the Trail of Tears, caves and rock shelters that weren't on any modern maps. Mary Beth's body ached from sleeping on stone, but her mind felt sharper than it had in years without the sedatives masquerading as heart medication. "They'll be watching your cabin," Joseph said, scanning the valley below through binoculars. "Rebecca's coming today with the social worker, and they can't afford for you to be missing when competency evaluations are scheduled." Mary Beth watched Guardian pace restlessly at the cave entrance, his amber eyes fixed on something in the distance. "He senses them, doesn't he? The security teams? Guardian can detect human presence from over a mile away. Right now, he's tracking at least 6 people positioned around your property." Joseph lowered the binoculars, his expression grim. "They're not just mining company security. I recognize some of those vehicles from Bureau of Indian Affairs motor pools." The federal involvement confirmed their worst fears about the conspiracy's reach. This wasn't just corporate greed, it was systematic government suppression of Cherokee sovereignty, using elderly tribal members as pawns in a larger economic game. Mary Beth felt the weight of generations of Cherokee resistance settling on her shoulders. "We need to get to the tribal council before Rebecca arrives," Mary Beth said. "But how do we get past their surveillance?" Joseph smiled, the first genuine expression of joy she'd seen from him since their reunion. "Guardian has an idea about that. Watch this." He gave a series of subtle hand signals to the wolf, who immediately disappeared into the forest canopy above the cave. Within minutes, Guardian returned with 3 more wolves, younger animals Mary Beth had never seen before. "His family," Joseph explained. "Guardian has been teaching them the same protective behaviors he learned from me. They've been watching over other Cherokee elders whose land is being targeted." The wolf pack moved with coordinated intelligence that amazed Mary Beth. Guardian seemed to communicate complex instructions through body language and subtle sounds, positioning his companions at strategic points around the cave entrance. "They're creating a diversion," Joseph explained. "While security teams chase wolf sightings across the forest, we'll use traditional Cherokee trails to reach tribal headquarters." As they prepared to leave, Joseph handed Mary Beth a leather pouch containing the original treaties and most damaging evidence against the mining conspiracy. "If something happens to me, Guardian will get you to safety. But this evidence has to reach the tribal council, no matter what." The journey to Cherokee Nation headquarters required 3 hours of careful movement through dense forest, avoiding roads and established trails where security teams might intercept them. Guardian led the way with supernatural awareness of human presence, stopping them twice to hide while mining company vehicles passed on distant roads. His wolf family maintained a protective perimeter, their howls echoing from strategic locations to confuse any pursuit. Mary Beth's arthritic joints screamed in protest, but determination fueled her forward. Every step was an act of rebellion against those who had dismissed her as a confused old woman ripe for exploitation. She was Mary Beth Clearwater, granddaughter of Cherokee warriors, and she would not surrender her people's land without a fight. When tribal headquarters came into view, they discovered Rebecca's car already in the parking lot alongside government vehicles and a van marked Cherokee Nation Social Services. Through the building's windows, Mary Beth could see her great-niece speaking animatedly with officials, gesturing toward documents spread across a conference table. "She's starting the competency hearing without you," Joseph observed, "claiming you're missing and confused, probably lost in the forest. This gives them grounds for emergency guardianship." Guardian growled low in his throat, sensing Mary Beth's emotional turmoil. The betrayal of watching Rebecca work to destroy her life felt like a physical wound. This young woman she'd loved like a daughter, whom she'd supported through college and career struggles, was systematically dismantling her autonomy for money. "There's something else," Joseph said grimly. "Dr. Crow Feather's car isn't here. Billy was supposed to testify about your actual medical condition, but he's missing from the hearing." The implications were terrifying. If their Cherokee doctor ally had been silenced or threatened, Mary Beth's medical records would show only the false narrative of cognitive decline and heart problems that supported Rebecca's guardianship petition. Without Billy's testimony about the sedatives and her real health status, she had no medical evidence to counter their claims. Joseph pulled out a satellite phone and made a quick call to tribal council members he'd been secretly coordinating with for months. The conversation was tense, conducted in rapid Cherokee that Mary Beth could follow despite years of disuse. When he hung up, his expression was dark. Billy Crow Feather was arrested this morning on federal charges of prescription drug fraud. They're claiming he's been illegally distributing sedatives and falsifying medical records. He's being held without bail pending investigation. The mining company had moved against their strongest ally, using Billy's efforts to protect Mary Beth as evidence of criminal behavior. It was a masterful legal maneuver that silenced their key witness while reinforcing the narrative that Mary Beth had been receiving inappropriate medical care from an allegedly corrupt doctor. "Can we still stop the guardianship hearing?" Mary Beth asked. "Not through normal channels, but Cherokee Nation's sovereignty gives us other options." Joseph helped her climb a ridge overlooking the tribal headquarters. Traditional Cherokee law allows any tribal member to call for emergency counsel if they have evidence of threats to Cherokee land or people. Guardian and his wolf family had positioned themselves around the building's perimeter, their presence creating distraction and concern among the government officials inside. Through the windows, Mary Beth could see Rebecca pointing toward the wolves, her face animated with what appeared to be genuine worry about her aunt's safety. "She really believes she's helping me," Mary Beth realized. "Rebecca thinks I'm mentally declining and the wolves are dangerous. She's been manipulated as much as she's manipulating me." Joseph nodded grimly. "The mining company recruited her by appealing to legitimate concerns about your welfare, then gradually convinced her that their solution was the only way to keep you safe. It's psychological manipulation on a sophisticated level." Mary Beth felt a complex mixture of anger and pity for her great niece. Rebecca was a victim too, caught in a web of financial pressure and emotional manipulation that made betraying family seem like the caring choice. But understanding Rebecca's motivations didn't lessen the immediate threat to Cherokee's sovereignty and Mary Beth's freedom. "What do we do now?" Mary Beth asked. Joseph checked his watch. "In 10 minutes, every Cherokee Nation Council member will receive an emergency alert about threats to tribal sovereignty. You have 15 minutes to present evidence before they vote on Rebecca's guardianship petition." "But how do I get inside without being arrested?" Joseph smiled and signaled to Guardian. "Cherokee tradition recognizes the spiritual significance of animal guides appearing during tribal council meetings. When Guardian leads you into that building, even federal agents will have to respect Cherokee religious practices." Mary Beth looked at the wolf who had protected her for 15 years, understanding finally that their bond transcended simple animal-human connection. Guardian represented the continuity of Cherokee resistance, the refusal to surrender sacred lands to those who saw only economic opportunity where Cherokee people saw ancestral heritage. "Are you ready, Bidey?" Joseph asked. Mary Beth straightened her shoulders, feeling the strength of generations of Cherokee women who had fought to preserve their people's way of life. "I'm ready." Guardian looked up at her with those knowing amber eyes, then began walking toward the tribal headquarters entrance, leading Mary Beth toward the confrontation that would determine not just her own fate, but the preservation of Cherokee sovereignty for future generations. Guardian's massive form filled the doorway of the Cherokee Nation tribal headquarters as Mary Beth stepped from the forest shadows behind him. The wolf's presence sent shockwaves through the assembled officials. Rebecca dropped her pen, the social worker pushed back from the conference table, and 2 federal agents reached instinctively for their weapons before remembering they were on sovereign Cherokee land. "Nobody move," commanded Chief Robert Thornton, rising from his seat at the head of the council table. "This is a sacred moment. When a wolf appears during tribal council, Cherokee tradition demands we listen to what the spirits are telling us. Rebecca's face went white as she saw her great-aunt emerge from behind Guardian, looking far more alert and determined than she had in years. "Aunt Mary Beth, how did you get here? We've been worried sick about you." "I'm sure you have," Mary Beth replied, her voice carrying a strength that surprised everyone in the room. Guardian padded to her side, his amber eyes never leaving the federal agents who were whispering urgently into their radios. The social worker, Janet Morrison, consulted her paperwork with visible confusion. "Mrs. Clearwater, according to your medical records, you're suffering from severe cognitive decline and shouldn't be wandering in the forest alone. This behavior confirms our assessment that you need immediate protective custody." "My medical records are fabricated," Mary Beth said clearly, pulling the leather pouch from her jacket. "And I have proof of a conspiracy to steal Cherokee land that reaches from Consolidated Mining Corporation to the Bureau of Indian Affairs." She placed the original Cherokee Nation treaties on the conference table. The ancient documents, with their official government seals and Cherokee syllabary text, commanded immediate attention from tribal council members who recognized their historical significance. "These are the lost treaties of 1838, Chief Thornton breathed, carefully examining the papers. "We thought they were destroyed during the Trail of Tears. These documents establish permanent Cherokee mineral rights that can never be transferred to non-Cherokee entities." Rebecca stood abruptly, her composure cracking. "This is absurd. Aunt Mary Beth is clearly having a psychotic episode. She's talking about conspiracies, wandering in the forest with dangerous wild animals, and now producing mysterious documents from nowhere. This proves she needs immediate medical intervention." "The documents are real," interrupted a voice from the back of the room. Dr. Billy Crow Feather stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 Cherokee Nation police officers. "And Mrs. Clearwater's mental state is completely normal. I was released an hour ago when FBI forensic accountants discovered the prescription fraud charges against me were fabricated using falsified pharmacy records." The federal agents exchanged worried glances as their carefully constructed case began unraveling. Billy approached the conference table, pulling out a thick medical file. "Mary Beth Clearwater has been taking mild herbal supplements for the past 2 years, not heart medication or sedatives. Her cognitive function is actually above average for her age group. The confusion and dependency Rebecca observed were deliberately induced to protect Mrs. Clearwater from more aggressive interventions." "That's impossible," Rebecca protested. "I've seen her talking to that wolf every day. She's been confused, forgetful, barely able to manage her finances." "Because we needed you to believe that," Mary Beth said gently. "Rebecca, you've been manipulated by people who understood exactly how to use your love for me against both of us." Mary Beth spread financial documents across the table showing payments from Consolidated Mining Corporation to Rebecca's bank account. $50,000 to pay off gambling debts that didn't exist. Your husband never gambled, Rebecca. The mining company created fake debt records to recruit you as an informant." Rebecca stared at the bank statements, her face cycling through confusion, realization, and horror. "But Mark's creditors called me directly. They threatened to hurt him if we didn't pay immediately." "Actors hired by the mining company," Chief Thornton explained. "We've been investigating similar recruitment tactics used against family members of 17 other Cherokee elders." "You're not the first person they've manipulated using fabricated financial emergencies." Guardian moved closer to Rebecca, his massive head tilted slightly as if sensing her emotional distress. Rather than backing away, Rebecca found herself looking into the wolf's amber eyes and seeing something that seemed almost like compassion. "The wolf isn't dangerous," Mary Beth said softly. "His name is Guardian, and he's been protecting me for 15 years while my husband worked to expose this conspiracy." "Your husband is dead," Rebecca whispered. "No, I'm not." Joseph Clearwater stepped through the entrance, causing Rebecca to stumble backward in shock. The room erupted in gasps and confused voices as tribal council members recognized a man they'd mourned 15 years ago. Joseph Clearwater was declared dead after a heart attack in 2008, Janet Morrison said, consulting her files frantically. This is either an imposter or Mrs. Clearwater is having severe hallucinations. I faked my death to protect my wife and investigate uranium mining operations that were targeting Cherokee burial grounds, Joseph explained calmly. Dr. Crow Feather helped me disappear after Consolidated Mining Corporation tried to poison me for discovering their illegal survey activities. Chief Thornton stood slowly, studying Joseph's face. Show me something only Joseph Clearwater would know. Joseph approached the chief and spoke quietly in Cherokee, sharing details about traditional ceremonies that weren't written in any public records. Chief Thornton's expression shifted from skepticism to amazement to rage as he realized the implications of what he was hearing. If Joseph Clearwater has been alive for 15 years, then his land ownership was never transferred to Mary Beth as his widow. The mining permits were issued based on fraudulent information about land ownership status, the chief said grimly. The federal agents were now speaking urgently into their phones, but Cherokee Nation police had quietly positioned themselves at all exits. This was sovereign Cherokee territory, and federal authority could be challenged when crimes against Cherokee sovereignty were involved. Rebecca collapsed into her chair, the full weight of her manipulation finally sinking in. They used me to destroy my own family. Everything I did to help you was actually hurting you. Guardian approached Rebecca cautiously, then rested his massive head on her lap in a gesture of forgiveness that brought tears to her eyes. The wolf seemed to understand human emotion in ways that transcended normal animal behavior, offering comfort to someone who needed it despite her role in the conspiracy. Rebecca, you were a victim too, Mary Beth said, placing a gentle hand on her great-niece's shoulder. They targeted your love for family and turned it into a weapon against us. But now we can work together to stop them from hurting other Cherokee families. Janet Morrison gathered her papers with visible frustration. Regardless of these claims about conspiracies, Mrs. Clearwater's competency evaluation is still legally required. The state has an obligation to ensure elderly citizens aren't being exploited or endangered. The state has no jurisdiction over Cherokee Nation internal affairs, Chief Thornton replied firmly. And as you can see, Mrs. Clearwater is clearly competent to make her own decisions about her welfare and property. The federal agents realized their carefully orchestrated plan was collapsing, but they had one final card to play. Joseph Clearwater is wanted for questioning in connection with domestic terrorism charges related to environmental extremism, the senior agent announced. Guardian's hackles rose as he sensed the renewed threat to his human family. The federal agent's announcement about terrorism charges sent a chill through the tribal council chambers, but Guardian's response was immediate and protective. The wolf positioned himself between Joseph and the agents, his amber eyes fixed on their hands as they moved toward their weapons. Mary Beth felt her heart breaking as she realized their moment of triumph was about to become a tragedy. Joseph Clearwater, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit eco-terrorism, destruction of federal property, and interference with lawful mining operations, the senior agent declared, stepping forward with handcuffs. This is sovereign Cherokee territory, Chief Thornton protested. You have no jurisdiction here without tribal consent. Federal terrorism charges supersede tribal sovereignty, the agent replied coldly. Stand aside or face obstruction of justice charges. Guardian's growl deepened as the agents approached Joseph, and Mary Beth saw the wolf's muscles tense for action. She knew with terrible certainty that Guardian would attack to protect Joseph, and the agents would shoot him without hesitation. After 15 years of faithful protection, the wolf who had led her to the truth was about to die defending the man who had saved him. Guardian, no! Mary Beth commanded in Cherokee. But the wolf's protective instincts were overriding his training. Joseph saw the danger too, and made a decision that shattered Mary Beth's heart. "I surrender," he said, stepping away from Guardian and extending his hands for the handcuffs. "But I demand the right to present evidence to the tribal council before I'm removed from Cherokee land." "You have no rights in this matter," the agent snapped. But Chief Thornton intervenes with the authority of Cherokee sovereignty. Under the Indian Self-Determination and Education Assistance Act, any Cherokee citizen accused of crimes on tribal land has the right to present evidence to the tribal council before federal removal, the chief declared. "You can arrest him, but you cannot remove him from Cherokee territory until tribal procedures are completed." The federal agents exchanged frustrated glances, knowing they were caught between federal authority and complex treaty law that could tie up Joseph's removal in courts for months. But they had leverage Mary Beth hadn't anticipated. "Mrs. Clearwater," the junior agent addressed her directly, "you're also wanted for questioning as an accessory to your husband's alleged crimes. Your cooperation in his illegal activities makes you complicit in federal terrorism charges." The accusation hit Mary Beth like a physical blow. Not only were they taking Joseph away again, but they were threatening to destroy her life as well. Rebecca gasped, finally understanding the full scope of the forces that had been manipulating their family. "You bastards," Rebecca said, standing with unexpected fury. "You used me to set up my own family for terrorism charges. This was never about protecting Aunt Mary Beth. It was about framing them both." Guardian sensed the escalating tension and made a choice that demonstrated his supernatural intelligence. Instead of attacking the agents threatening Joseph, he walked calmly to the conference table and placed his paw on the original Cherokee treaties. The symbolic gesture was unmistakable. The wolf was testifying on behalf of Cherokee sovereignty. "Even the wolf knows these documents prove federal overreach," Chief Thornton observed. "These treaties establish Cherokee mineral rights that cannot be superseded by federal mining permits, regardless of terrorism allegations." Dr. Billy Crow Feather stepped forward with additional evidence that changed everything. "I have recordings of conversations between mining company executives and Bureau of Indian Affairs officials discussing how to fabricate terrorism charges against Joseph Clearwater. They knew his evidence would expose their illegal mining permits." The doctor placed a digital recorder on the table and pressed play. The room filled with voices discussing how to eliminate the Cherokee problem by framing Joseph as an environmental terrorist who had sabotaged mining equipment to protect burial grounds. "We'll make it look like he's been planning attacks for years," one voice said clearly. "Plant some evidence, maybe stage a few incidents that can be traced back to him. Once he's labeled a terrorist, nobody will listen to his conspiracy theories about mining permits." The federal agents' faces went pale as they realized their case was built entirely on fabricated evidence. But they weren't finished yet. "Those recordings are inadmissible without proper chain of custody documentation," the senior agent protested. "And regardless of mining company conspiracies, Joseph Clearwater did fake his own death, which constitutes fraud against federal death benefit programs." Mary Beth felt the walls closing in around them. Even if they proved the terrorism charges were fabricated, Joseph could still face federal fraud charges for faking his death and allowing her to collect survivor benefits. The mining company had created a legal trap with multiple layers, ensuring that Joseph would be silenced regardless of which charges stuck. Guardian seemed to sense the renewed threat and did something unprecedented. The wolf walked to each tribal council member, looking directly into their eyes as if communicating something beyond human understanding. Several elders nodded as if receiving a message, and Chief Thornton's expression grew thoughtful. "The wolf is reminding us of our obligations under Cherokee spiritual law," the chief announced. When an animal guide leads our people to important truths, we have a sacred duty to protect both the messenger and the message. Cherokee spiritual law doesn't supersede federal criminal statutes, the agent replied dismissively. Actually, it does, said a new voice from the doorway. FBI agent Sandra Little Hawk, a Cherokee Nation member who had been investigating the mining conspiracy from within federal law enforcement, entered with a team of federal investigators. We've been building a case against Consolidated Mining Corporation for 2 years, and Joseph Clearwater's evidence is crucial to prosecuting this conspiracy. The room dynamic shifted dramatically as Agent Little Hawk presented FBI credentials and arrest warrants for the very agents who had been trying to arrest Joseph. Agents Morrison and Phillips are under investigation for accepting bribes from mining companies and falsifying federal terrorism cases against environmental activists. The corrupt agents realized their situation was hopeless and made a desperate final move. Agent Morrison drew his weapon, pointing it directly at Guardian. "That wolf is a dangerous predator, and I'm authorized to use lethal force to protect civilians." Mary Beth's world narrowed to a single moment of terror as she watched the agent's finger tighten on the trigger. Guardian had saved her life countless times, led her to the truth that would protect Cherokee sovereignty, and now he was about to die because corrupt officials needed to eliminate witnesses to their crimes. "No!" Mary Beth threw herself toward Guardian, but she was too far away and too slow. The gunshot echoed through the tribal headquarters, but it wasn't Agent Morrison who fired. Rebecca had grabbed a ceremonial Cherokee war club from the wall display and struck the agent's hand just as he pulled the trigger, sending the bullet harmlessly into the ceiling. Guardian was safe, but Agent Morrison's rage had reached a breaking point. He turned the weapon toward Rebecca, his face twisted with fury at having his plans destroyed by the very person he had manipulated for 2 years. "You stupid girl," he snarled. "Do you have any idea what you've cost us?" This time, Guardian didn't hesitate. The wolf launched himself at Agent Morrison with the full force of his 120-pound frame, knocking the corrupt agent to the ground and standing over him with bared teeth. But the effort cost Guardian dearly. Mary Beth could see blood spreading across the wolf's gray coat where Morrison's wild shot had grazed his shoulder. "Guardian's been shot," Dr. Crowfeather announced, moving quickly to examine the wolf's wound. "It's not fatal, but he needs immediate medical attention." FBI agent Little Hawk handcuffed the corrupt agents while Cherokee Nation police secured the scene. The immediate physical danger was over, but Mary Beth knelt beside Guardian, holding his massive head as Billy worked to stop the bleeding from his shoulder wound. "You saved us all," she whispered to the wolf in Cherokee. "But at what cost?" Guardian looked up at her with those knowing amber eyes, and Mary Beth saw something that looked like peace. The wolf had fulfilled his mission. He had protected the Cherokee land, exposed the conspiracy, and brought her family back together. But the price had been his own blood, and Mary Beth feared it might not be enough to save his life. Joseph knelt beside them, his handcuffs removed by Agent Little Hawk as the terrorism charges evaporated. "He's going to be okay," Joseph said, though his voice carried doubt. Guardians survived worse injuries than this. Rebecca approached hesitantly, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry. I almost got him killed because I was too stupid to see I was being used." Guardian lifted his head slightly and looked at Rebecca with what seemed like forgiveness, then closed his eyes as Billy continued treating his wound. The wolf's breathing was shallow but steady, and Mary Beth held on to hope that her faithful Guardian would survive to see the victory he had made possible. 6 months after the confrontation at Cherokee Nation headquarters, Mary Beth Clearwater stood in the golden afternoon light streaming through the windows of the newly constructed Cherokee Wolf Sanctuary. Guardian's recovery had been slow but complete, and now the magnificent gray wolf lay contentedly beside the fireplace, watching over 3 wolf pups who tumbled and played across the hardwood floors of what had once been Mary Beth's lonely cabin. The transformation was remarkable. Where once a single elderly woman had lived in isolation, fearing for her future and her sanity, now stood a thriving center for Cherokee cultural preservation and wildlife conservation. The original cabin had been expanded into a research facility and educational center while preserving the sacred spaces where Mary Beth and Joseph had built their life together. The DNA results came back today, Dr. Sarah Running Bear, the sanctuary's wildlife biologist, announced as she entered the main room. Guardian's offspring carry genetic markers that link them directly to wolves that lived in Cherokee territory before European settlement. He truly was the last of his lineage. Mary Beth stroked Guardian's graying muzzle, marveling at how the wolf had somehow preserved not just Cherokee land, but Cherokee spiritual heritage. The 3 pups, named Hope, Truth, and Justice by the Tribal Council, represented the first wolves born on Cherokee land in over a century. Joseph emerged from his study, where he'd been cataloging the extensive documentation of mining company corruption that had led to 17 federal indictments and the protection of over 50,000 acres of Cherokee territory. His hair was completely white now, but his eyes held the same gentle strength that had attracted Mary Beth 50 years ago. "The congressional hearing is confirmed for next month," Joseph announced. "Mary Beth, they want you to be the primary witness for the Indigenous Land Protection Act." At 84, Mary Beth had become an unlikely national advocate for elderly Indigenous rights. Her memoir, Guardian Angels: A Wolf's Gift of Truth, had spent 12 weeks on bestseller lists and brought international attention to the systematic targeting of Native American elders by extractive industries. Rebecca entered through the front door, carrying grocery bags and wearing the traditional Cherokee tear dress she'd learned to sew from tribal elders. Her transformation from unwitting corporate pawn to passionate Cherokee rights advocate had been as dramatic as Mary Beth's emergence from isolation. "The reporter from National Geographic is here," Rebecca announced. "She wants to photograph Guardian with the pups for the cover story about human-wolf relationships." "Guardian will decide if he wants to be photographed," Mary Beth replied. "He's earned the right to choose his own level of fame." The wolf seemed to understand the conversation, lifting his head and looking toward the door where photographer Elena Martinez was setting up her equipment. Guardian had developed an uncanny ability to assess human intentions, and after a long moment of observation, he stood and walked toward the camera setup, the 3 pups following their adopted grandfather. Dr. Billy Crow Feather arrived for his weekly medical check on both Mary Beth and Guardian, carrying his traditional Cherokee medicine bag alongside modern medical equipment. The tribal doctor had been cleared of all charges and received a federal commendation for his undercover work protecting Cherokee elders. "Your blood pressure is better than most 50-year-olds," Billy told Mary Beth after completing her examination. "Stopping those sedatives and resuming an active lifestyle has added years to your life." "Guardian added years to my life," Mary Beth corrected. Everything else just followed from his guidance. The Wolf Sanctuary had become a pilgrimage site for Cherokee people reconnecting with traditional relationships between humans and animals. Elders brought children to hear Mary Beth tell the story of how Guardian had led her family back together, while researchers studied the unique bond between the wolves and their human caretakers. "The university wants to establish a permanent research station here," Joseph announced. "They're offering funding for a 10-year study of human-wolf coexistence that could change wildlife management policies across North America." Mary Beth looked out the window toward Guardian's favorite resting spot beneath the old oak tree where she used to sit in lonely solitude. Now the area bustled with activity, Cherokee language classes, traditional crafts workshops, and educational programs that drew visitors from around the world. Agent Sandra Little Hawk visited regularly, both as an FBI liaison and as a Cherokee Nation member who had helped expose the mining conspiracy. Her investigation had uncovered similar schemes targeting indigenous communities across 12 states, leading to the creation of a federal task force dedicated to protecting tribal sovereignty. The mining company executives received sentences ranging from 15 to 25 years, Agent Littlehawk reported during her latest visit. More importantly, the Indigenous Land Protection Act will make it impossible for extractive industries to target elderly tribal members in the future. Rebecca had thrown herself into Cherokee cultural education with the passion of someone making up for lost time. She'd learned the Cherokee language, traditional food preparation, and the ceremonial protocols that connected Cherokee people to their ancestral homeland. "I understand now why you couldn't leave this place," Rebecca told Mary Beth as they prepared traditional fry bread in the sanctuary kitchen. "This land holds the stories of our people. Losing it would have been like losing our souls." "Guardian understood that before any of us did," Mary Beth replied. "Wolves know about territorial bonds that humans have forgotten." The three wolf pups had grown large enough to begin learning from Guardian, who demonstrated the same protective behaviors he'd shown toward Mary Beth. Hope, the female pup, showed particular intelligence and seemed to be inheriting Guardian's role as the pack's connection to human activities. Chief Robert Thornton had declared the sanctuary a Cherokee Nation cultural heritage site, ensuring its permanent protection under tribal sovereignty. The designation also established legal precedents that other indigenous communities could use to protect their own sacred lands. "Your story changed everything," the chief told Mary Beth during the sanctuary's official dedication ceremony. "One elderly woman and her wolf companion exposed corruption that threatened indigenous communities across the continent." The ceremony drew Cherokee people from across Oklahoma and beyond, creating connections between tribal members who had been scattered by historical displacement and modern economic pressures. Guardians seemed to understand the significance of the gathering, moving through the crowd with dignified calm as children and elders alike sought to touch the wolf who had become a symbol of Cherokee resilience. Mary Beth's daily routine now included leading educational tours, corresponding with researchers studying human-animal bonds, and working on her second book about Cherokee spiritual relationships with wildlife. But the most meaningful moments remained the quiet evenings when she and Guardian sat together, watching the sunset paint the Cherokee hills in shades of gold and crimson. "You gave me my life back," she told Guardian during one of these peaceful moments. "But more than that, you gave our people their land back." Guardian's amber eyes reflected the sunset as he rested his head on Mary Beth's lap, a gesture of contentment that spoke of promises fulfilled and duties completed. The wolf had aged gracefully, his muzzle now more silver than gray, but his presence remained as strong and reassuring as ever. Joseph joined them on the porch, settling into his favorite chair with a cup of coffee and the day's correspondence from Cherokee communities around the country. Letters arrived weekly from tribal members facing similar threats to their land, seeking advice and support from the couple who had defeated corporate and federal conspiracy. "The Lakota delegation wants to visit next month," Joseph announced. "They're facing pressure from oil companies using tactics similar to what we experienced. Guardian will help them understand what to look for," Mary Beth said confidently. "Wolves recognize predators in all their forms." As darkness settled over the Cherokee hills, the three wolf pups returned from their evening exploration, joining Guardian on the porch in a family gathering that had become their nightly ritual. Hope approached Mary Beth cautiously, still learning to trust human contact, while truth and justice wrestled playfully near Guardian's protective watch. Rebecca emerged from the sanctuary's office, where she'd been coordinating with other Cherokee cultural centers about expanding the educational programs. Her transformation from corporate pawn to cultural advocate had been complete, and she now served as the sanctuary's director of community outreach. The documentary crew from PBS wants to film Guardian's morning routine, Rebecca announced. They think viewers need to see how naturally he interacts with visitors, especially the children. Guardian will decide, Mary Beth repeated her standard response. He's earned the right to privacy if he wants it. But Guardian had never been publicity shy, seeming to understand that his story could inspire protection for other wolves in their habitats. The next morning, he performed his usual greeting ritual for the cameras, moving through a group of visiting Cherokee schoolchildren with gentle dignity that brought tears to the eyes of hardened documentary filmmakers. Dr. Running Bear had documented Guardian's remarkable longevity. At over 17 years old, he was ancient for a wolf, but his health remained strong thanks to excellent veterinary care and the sense of purpose that came from his protective role. The scientists theorized that Guardian's deep emotional bonds with humans had actually extended his lifespan beyond normal wolf biology. He's living proof that love can literally add years to life, Dr. Running Bear observed. The stress reduction that comes from secure relationships appears to have significant health benefits for wolves, just as it does for humans. As winter approached the Cherokee Hills, Mary Beth felt profound gratitude for the unexpected path her life had taken. At 84, she was healthier, more purposeful, and more connected to her Cherokee heritage than she'd ever been. The lonely widow, who had once feared losing her home, had become a national symbol of indigenous resilience and the powerful bonds between humans and animals. Guardian lay beside the fireplace in the sanctuary's main room, the 3 young wolves sleeping peacefully around him like a living symbol of hope for the future. His amber eyes reflected the firelight as he watched Mary Beth and Joseph reading together, still protecting them even in moments of perfect peace. "Thank you," Mary Beth whispered to Guardian in Cherokee as she prepared for bed, "for leading me home." The wolf lifted his head slightly, acknowledging her gratitude with the same dignity he'd shown throughout their 15-year partnership. Tomorrow would bring new visitors, new challenges, and new opportunities to protect Cherokee land and culture. But tonight, in the warm glow of the sanctuary fireplace, surrounded by family, both human and wolf, Mary Beth Clearwater knew she was exactly where she belonged. The Cherokee Hills held their stories now, tales of betrayal overcome by truth, of family bonds stronger than death, and of a wolf whose loyalty had saved not just one elderly woman, but an entire people's connection to their ancestral home. At 83, Mary Beth Clearwater discovered something most of us fear we've lost forever, that it's never too late for a completely new chapter. When that mysterious wolf appeared at her husband's funeral 15 years ago, she thought she was losing her mind. Instead, she was about to find her purpose. Like so many of us in our golden years, Mary Beth felt invisible, dismissed as a confused old woman whose best days were behind her. The bills were piling up, family was making decisions about her future, and she wondered if anyone would even remember her name after she was gone. But Guardian the Wolf saw something in Mary Beth that she'd forgotten about herself, her strength, her wisdom, her unbreakable spirit. He led her not just to the truth about a corporate conspiracy, but to the realization that our most meaningful adventures often begin when the world thinks we're finished. Mary Beth didn't just save Cherokee land. She discovered that love, purpose, and family can take forms we never expected. Sometimes the very thing that seems impossible, following a wolf into the forest at 83, becomes the path to everything we've been searching for. What unexpected guardian angel has appeared in your life when you needed guidance most? Have you ever felt dismissed because of your age, only to prove everyone wrong? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might inspire someone else to follow their own wolf into the forest.